Well, good morning. Welcome again to the newsletter video. So today is March 20th. It's week 10 here in the legislature, so March 20th through 25th, the 63rd through 68th day of the legislature, and happy first day of spring. I know in Anchorage you are enjoying a beautiful day after about 10 days of every day sunny. I'm seeing the long-term forecast for Anchorage and it's sunny every day, so enjoy this wonderful spring weather. I just love March in Anchorage. My mother always asks about the weather report where I am, so I will tell you here in Juneau today, first day of spring, it's raining. So anyway, on with the report today on the newsletter. So we had a town hall meeting on Saturday, and by we, I mean Representative Lance Pruitt and I had the town hall meeting in District 27. So that's the East Anchorage part of my district. The other half of my district is the hillside all the way down to Portage. And many of those folks attended also. But the subject was the budget, also the budget, and in addition, the budget. So we had a great conversation. It was 2 hours. We began by having the Department of Transportation there. They talked about upcoming road projects all over the city, actually, and a little bit about snow clearing and the challenges they've had this last year. Then secondarily, we had a gentleman from the Department of Health and Human Services talk about a rescue medication for opioid or narcotic drug overdose. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the video. But the main thing we talked about was the budget. So one of the things that I shared with folks is that we have had over the last couple years a decrease of 80% in incoming state revenue. But the reductions to state spending have only been 44%. So you can see from that we've got a gap. Consequently, the government has done just what you would do as a family. If you were earning $100 a day and suddenly your income dropped down to $20 a day, you'd make some changes, right? First thing you'd probably do is make some reductions in your spending. That's what the Senate is endeavoring to do. And this year we're looking at a 5% overall reduction in spending. And many departments, I can assure you, are looking at that 5%. I've served on some of those finance subcommittees, and we've made a reduction of 5% on those committees. But the other thing you'd probably do is turn to savings. Just to kind of bridge the gap for a while, and we've done that also. We have a couple large savings accounts. One of them, the statutory budget reserve, that's one of the easy, kind of the simple saving account, actually has been spent down to nearly nothing. We have now the constitutional budget reserve. That one is a bit more difficult to get into. It takes 3/4 of the legislature to agree to do that, so both bodies, the House and the Senate. That account has quite a bit of money left in it, about $4.4 billion. But this year's budget gap is $2.7 billion. So what else could we do? So we've been looking at how to bridge that gap. And we talked about it last week, but the Senate on Wednesday passed Senate Bill 26. And this accesses the earnings of our permanent fund. That was a big topic of discussion during the town hall meeting. And just so you know, this year, well, first of all, in Senate Bill 26, it talks about using 5.25% of those earnings to bridge the gap. And that would equate to about $1.8 billion in this year's budget. So we'd still have about a $900 million gap. And that's where the budget reductions come in. Our solution, the Senate solution that we're working hard on, is a stable and sustainable budget. So reducing spending, we're looking at putting in place a spending cap. That's another part of Senate Bill 26, a spending cap. We're also looking at a way to preserve the dividend. The governor is actually proposing an increase in government spending, and so is the House. Both of those entities, the governor and the House, are looking at taking earnings, the earnings of the permanent fund and actually sweeping large amounts of them, which would jeopardize the permanent fund dividend going forward. The Senate is trying to preserve that dividend, guaranteeing it at $1,000 for 3 years going forward. So that was a big part of our discussion. The spending cap on government, putting government on an allowance, is another critical part, and that's something that we shared on Saturday with folks. A lot of people asked about an income tax. That was another question that came up. Only about 250,000 Alaskans, remember our population is 700,000, only about 250,000 Alaskans would actually pay an income tax. The governor has changed his income tax proposal from last year. Last year it would have brought in about $200,000. This year it would bring in about, under his proposal, about 600 million. Last year about 200 million. This year about 600 million. It would still require 50 new state employees and an upgrade in our technology systems. The other thing that came up during the town hall meeting were questions about the snack bar that exists here in the Capitol building. You know, why don't we cut that out? What are we paying for meals? Things like that. It is a snack bar in the Capitol building here, and it would be a few $100,000. It would make no significant impact on the budget. We're really looking at those huge drivers of the budget and how do we correct this over time. The budget is a complex issue. The reason it's complex is it deals with people's lives. We have state employees. We have actually one state employee for every 50 Alaska citizens. That's really something. But these are employees that are doing what citizens have said are critical jobs. It was interesting. A gentleman was pretty outspoken. Actually, several were pretty outspoken at the town hall meeting that we had not cut enough in state government. But ironically, after the meeting, he came up to speak to me personally and again emphasized his dissatisfaction with the lack of cuts in government spending. But after he had done that, he asked me to restore a program that was cut last year, even though restoring that program would have meant more state spending. So this is a complex subject, and I don't know that citizens sometimes don't get a little confused, you know, wanting budget cuts, but at the same time wanting their particular program to be safe and be preserved. We talked about public safety. One of the areas that we actually are adding positions back into the budget is in public safety. 5 additional positions for Alaska State Troopers. Those positions, many of them were cut last year. We're restoring 5 state troopers to the budget. Education, huge subject. One of the things that I wanted people to know is that the state of Alaska subsidizes the University of Alaska to the tune of about $20,000 per student. $20,000 of state funding per University of Alaska student. The next closest state subsidizes their students at $9,000 per student. So you can see we contribute a huge amount to the University of Alaska. We are concerned about the amount of remedial courses that the university has to offer as students come out of our high schools in Alaska and are not prepared for college work. Those students do have to pay for those courses. Another subject that came up was access to the legislature. And some of you may have heard that one of the freshman legislators in the House has proposed moving legislative meetings, the legislative session, to Anchorage or South Central, the population center. Interestingly, I will just comment, we've had some special sessions in Anchorage and almost no one showed up for those. So I'm not sure that having the location in Anchorage would really bring more public attendance at the meetings, but what it would do is significantly reduce per diem. As Anchorage legislators would, I'm pretty sure I can say for the most part, not take per diem if the sessions were in Anchorage and we were living in our own homes. Last of all, we talked about the opioid crisis. In fact, that was a special feature of the town hall meeting on Saturday. We had a gentleman from the Department of Health and Human Services talking about a rescue medication that the state of Alaska has received a federal grant for. And so over the next 5 years, they will be distributing this medication. It's called Narcan. If someone has overdosed on an opioid, they will become unconscious and they are on the verge of death. By administering this medication, it's a nasal spray, so it's pretty easy to administer, you can actually save their life. Now, there were folks at the meeting that were pretty upset about this. They said, well, why are we spending government money on this when these people should simply not be using drugs? And of course, that's a very valid point. But these are folks that are frankly dying before our eyes. And if we have a chance to save their life and give them a second chance, and then make meaningful efforts to help them recover from their opioid addiction, their narcotic addiction, we can actually help them become productive citizens, holding down jobs and being part of our society. So that's the goal with the program, and I'm very supportive of it. In fact, it falls in line with a bill that I passed last session called the ABLE Act, which allows folks with disabilities to actually save money from jobs that they might have. They would be able to save this money just as you or I would save money in a college savings fund for our children or aunts or our nieces or nephews. So the more we can help people become independent and self-supporting, that's the goal of government, to protect those liberties. So I know this has been long. It was a great constituent meeting, town hall meeting in Anchorage on Saturday. Hope you enjoy the newsletter, and we'll see you again next week.